the screen. Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday, everybody, and welcome to another LEARNin 1031 Live. We have an amazing show today. So with that, let's kick it off. All right, everybody, welcome to another amazing segment, an exciting episode of LEARNin 1031 Live. I want to present this show to all of our viewers who are interested in real estate and investing and learning about different strategies on how to create wealth and a legacy for their family. So with that, I want to introduce Erica Traulsen, Queen of DSTs with Legacy Investments and Real Estate.
That is me. Thank you so much. And that is Chris Astillero, as you probably all know, with Exchange Resources, the king of 1031 exchanges.
Thank you, Erica.
Which, why don't we thank our very important sponsor for the show?
Located in Rancho Bernardo, we've been around for over 26 years and we've done over 60,000 tax-deferred exchanges. If you don't do a 1031 tax-deferred exchange, you could be faced with about 30 to 40% in taxes, right? Wouldn't you rather roll that over into the next property so that you can buy more with it? Well, we're here to give you your options. Let's talk. That guy looks familiar.
He looks, what a handsome devil.
Thank you.
He does look familiar. We see him once every 3
years. Thank you.
With that, thanks again to Exchange Resources for sponsoring our show today. And let's go ahead and welcome our very special guest, Hayden Goldberg, looking beautiful in her California glow over there. Hi, Hayden.
Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here.
Hey, Hayden.
You'll in a minute, we'll get into why we invited you here on the show. But first, why don't you tell our viewers and listeners who you are, what you do?
Sure, I would love to. Hi, everyone. I'm Hayden Goldberg. I'm a realtor, investor, and strategist here in North County, San Diego. And I spend a lot of time helping people understand that wealthy investors often play by a completely different set of rules, right? And it's not that they're smarter, it's that we weren't taught by the same set of rules. So I love demystifying those strategies, helping people save money, reduce their taxes, and really use real estate as a tool to build lasting wealth.
Amazing. That is exactly why we brought you here today on this show.
That's exactly what people want to do.
That's right.
Yeah. I think everyone listening or watching right now, they all want to build wealth through real estate, which is the perfect segue into why exactly we brought you on the show today. So you guys, about 2 years ago, Hayden and I had probably met a couple months before that. And I don't remember if you sent it to me or if I discovered it naturally, but I saw this article that you wrote. And that article is what's up here on the screen right now. 4 real estate loopholes the rich are using. Although I would argue that they're not really loopholes, they're rules that seem like loopholes because they're genuinely too good to be true, right? Mm-hmm. They're too good to be true. Think of them as loopholes, but they're like these fancy tactics that the rich are using to make money in real estate. And I've been thinking about that article ever since, literally 2 years now. The first 2 points, these are 4 loopholes, but the first 2 points, buy, borrow, die, might be more appropriate for our lending show. So let's have you back to talk about that on our LEARNin Lending Live one day. And point number 2 is the opportunity zones. But opportunity zones and opportunity zone funds are going through a huge makeover right now because of the One Big Beautiful Bill and how opportunity zones come into play there. The old QOZs are dying or sunsetting after this year, and the new ones will start next year. So we'll come back another day and talk about those. But points number 3 and 4 are so relevant to our 1031 show. point number one being 1031s themselves. So Chris, for anyone who hasn't heard this spiel before, can you give us a little overview on what 1031s are?
Absolutely. I'm super excited about it because there's a lot of investors out there who don't really know what their options are and how 1031 exchanges can actually dramatically change their wealth. It's been around for over 100 years, and there's 4 basic rules. Number 1, you have to buy like-kind property. So when you sell your real estate investment property, you have to buy another real estate investment. Condo, you can sell and you can buy a single-family rental with it. You can buy units with it. You can buy land with it. There's commercial properties, industrial properties, you can mix and match as long as it's investment property for investment property. And the intent is to sell your investment property and acquire another investment property with building cash flow or appreciation for that property. The second is you have to buy equal to or greater in value than what you're selling for, so that you can defer your capital gains taxes. So that all of it can be deferred, you have to buy equal to or greater in value. The third rule is there is a timeline. You have 180 days to close on your replacement property after you close on your relinquished property. So as soon as you close escrow on your relinquished property, there's 180 days that you have to utilize in order to close on your replacement property, with the first 45 days allowing you to identify up to 3 properties you wish to purchase. Okay, as long as you close on one, it's a successful exchange. But there's multiple properties that you can buy. Again, there's lots of opportunities out there that people really don't know. And then the fourth rule is that same taxpayer selling must be the same taxpayer buying. So if it's John and Mary Smith as husband and wife selling their rental property, it has to be John and Mary Smith as husband and wife purchasing the property. In real estate, a lot of the investors put their title on an LLC. So if it's John and Bob LLC, it's got to be John and Bob LLC selling and also purchasing their property. So there's a lot of different rules, and the reason why these rules have been implemented is because the IRS wants you to follow these rules so that you can defer your capital gains taxes. Once you break one of these rules, it's a failed exchange. And guess what? You're going to wind up paying about 30 to 40% in taxes. So those are the 4 basic rules. And let's get into the next segment with Erica and Hayden.
Yeah, Chris, why don't we let's go ahead and ground our viewership a little bit on 1031, right? Because you gave a ton of really, really good information, but I think an example might really hammer it home, okay? So imagine you bought a condo in Carlsbad 10 years ago for $400,000, right? Today, that condo is worth $900,000. You've just gained $500,000, right? If you sell and cash out, what's going to happen? You could owe $100,000, maybe more, right? And with a 1031 exchange, you take all of that $500,000 and you roll it into your next investment, right? You're not handing it over to the IRS in the same way. So you didn't avoid the tax burden forever, but you kept your money working for you. And that's the whole idea.
Yeah,
that
is huge.
Great point, Hayden.
$400,000 in 10 years being worth $900,000 because you are a really smart investor and young enough or alive enough at that time to have bought property back then, right? You know, you bought a property only 10 years ago, Hayden. It's appreciated more than double.
It's incredible. Yeah. Southern California for you.
Right, exactly. So, you know, like you said, you're going to reinvest all of that money into more real estate. I know, Chris, you have clients doing all sorts of things with their exchanges.
Absolutely.
Right.
There's just so many different things. I mean, we've got the delayed exchange where they can actually identify, you know, after, you know, within that 45 days and then close on their property. We've got the reverse exchange where investors can actually buy their investment property first and then have the time to go ahead and sell the relinquished property. We've got construction exchanges where people can actually purchase, you know, a piece of a property that needs major construction, major remodeling, and utilize a lot of those exchange funds to go ahead and fix that property, close on it, and then go ahead and rent it out. So there's a lot of variations as far as the 1031 exchanges are concerned. And again, we need professionals like Hayden to be able to educate a lot of the investors as to what those options are. So I'm super excited of what we're going to get into today.
Well, and Chris, what you described, like those all do sound like fancy ways that only rich people would know to like make money in real estate, which is why they sound like these insane loopholes, right? Like the first time I ever heard about a 1031 exchange, I was like, absolutely not. Like that can't be kosher, right? There's just no way. But it's everybody's doing it, right? So once you know it exists,
right.
and then you got to have professionals on your team though, like Chris, like Hayden, like myself, to guide you in the right direction so that you don't make any mistakes. Chris, earlier you said like the IRS wants you to follow these rules. They don't really. They want to take your money. They want you to mess up.
Yeah, they really do.
That's why
they really do.
There's like so many rules to accomplish an exchange successfully so that they can take your money because they want it. But
you have to jump through hoops to get that tax deferral.
That's right. Or you have to know the loopholes, right? And that's what it's all about. It's learning what they were taught, what they were growing up, absorbing from everyone around them in their proximity. Now we get to know that, right? Now you get to educate yourself and you get to build your own wealth vehicle for your next generation, your generational wealth, your family. Now it's your turn.
Well, what an amazing segue into what we're going to talk about next. Because your point 4 was the 721 UPREIT. So let's briefly touch on what a DST is. A Delaware Statutory Trust is the vehicle to get into a 721 UPREIT program. For those of you listening, a DST, let's briefly touch on. A Delaware Statutory Trust is it's real physical real estate, maybe a portfolio of real estate. It's truly, genuinely 100% passive, and it's allowed as a like-kind property in a 1031 exchange. Why does that matter? Again, so that you can kind of kick that capital gains burden down the road, right? Exchanging, you're not getting rid of your gains until you pass away, and that's a story for another day. But you're kicking the can down the road. You're in a DST. You're in a passive piece of real estate or portfolio of real estate. And then the wealthy are using it to go into, like Hayden wrote in her article, this 721 UPREIT. UPREIT stands for Umbrella Partnership Real Estate Investment Trust. Hayden, when you were writing this article, had you heard of 721s before, or were you like learning about it as doing your research as you were writing the article?
No, I had known a bit about it, but I'm in real estate, right? It's not common knowledge. That's just out there for everyone. And unless you have an Erica or a Chris or a Hayden on your team, you're not going to know about that, right? It's just going to sound like jargon that the rich people use, and you just it blows over your head. Now you get to educate yourself. Now you get to use those same tools that the rich are using to make sure, like Erica's saying, that you're not just kicking the can, you're kicking the can while the can is compounding. And that's what it's about. It's that compounding, right? That gets you that real forever lasting wealth.
That is such a valid point. It's not just about waiting, well, I like to think of like in an exchange, so often people are exchanging from one property to one property to one property, one unit. That unit goes vacant. What happens to your income? Mm-hmm. Boom. Like it goes from 100% of the rent to nothing, right? Yeah. When you exchange, you can exchange up. People do this a lot. They diversify into 2 properties. They use the equity. They take out a loan. They go in different directions, whatever. But like a lot of people estate planning their real estate, maybe they're not eligible for a new loan to exchange into more properties if they need to exchange up or they need to replace a loan. Some people are exchanging to like get their, I don't know. Well, so many reasons. We can't even get into all of them today. That's why we have a weekly show. But yeah, I think the wealthy know that like using these passive vehicles, they don't have to lift a finger, maybe to hit send to forward their tax documents to their tax person, right? And And I think it's
Totally.
so great that you.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of
Thanks.
investors, when they're young and they're still building up their wealth, when they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, but by the time you've reached your 60s, 70s, and 80s, you get really tired. I mean, I was managing properties. I bought and flipped properties. I held properties for investments, and trust me, the landlord, the laws in California favor the tenants, and unfortunately, I've had to deal with, kicking tenants out, evictions. I've had to deal with all of these repair issues that I had to deal with. I get called in the middle of the night. When you're in your 60s, 70s, and 80s, that's the time you should have that freedom where you're actually enjoying your wealth. And I think with this, the UPREIT, that's going to allow and unlock this opportunity for a lot of the investors to see that this is a way to get that freedom where they can actually spend more time with their kids, do more traveling, spend more time with their grandkids, and then really enjoy the fruits of their labor, their equity with, by learning about UPREITs. So, it's time. This is the silver tsunami, right? A lot of investors are going to be exchanging real estate over the next 20 years. There's going to be trillions of dollars, and we want to be able to educate them to help them make the right decisions in future investments.
I'm so glad you brought that point up, though, Chris, because not enough people are thinking about it from a lifestyle perspective, right? And you're right. Real estate is really sexy in your 30s and your 40s and your 50s. But then you start managing a ton of properties, right? And you get to the point where maybe you're in your late 60s, your 70s, and you're thinking to yourself, I'm done being a landlord, right? You need an exit strategy. You're exhausted and you're ready to use all of that compounded interest, all of that equity you've gained, and roll it into something that can be more passive for you.
Yeah,
absolutely. Very, very good point. So the 721s. Now, Erica, you mentioned that in order to get to the 721s, you do have to get into the DST. Can you kind of explain that a little bit more for our viewers on how they can actually get into the 721 if they have an investment property to sell? Let's say they have $1 million in gain. How do they actually get access to the 721?
That's a really great question. If you happen to be asking me, the DST queen. So DSTs are the vehicle to get into the 721, like I said, and the 1031s exchange is the vehicle that most people are using to get into a DST. Why is it important though? So 721, so REITs, real estate investment trusts, which the 721, gets you into. It's a type of the umbrella partnership part of a real estate investment trust, a REIT. REITs are not exchangeable. You cannot do a 1031 exchange into any sort of real estate investment trust. So if you want to get into that with your current existing piece of rental property or other investment real estate, you have to go through the DST first. That they're both types of exchanges. You exchange from your investment real estate into the DST. It has to be there for a couple of years to meet the investment property qualifications to be considered like-kind investment property for a 1031. So you've gone from your real estate into a DST, and then after a couple of years, like I said, that's when the UPREIT can occur. The 721 exchange, UPREIT exchange, okay? Typically, those properties are being held for 2 to 3 years after the DST is fully funded by investors, okay? So that might be 2 years from now, maybe 3 years from now, depending on how long the fund is open, how the property is doing. The sponsors of the DST will make that decision. It's truly passive real estate. The investors stop getting to have a say or needing to have a say. Again, like you don't have to make those decisions. It's no longer your burden. But you're moving in then to the 721 through that vehicle. And you want to make sure you're planning with your financial advisor, your investment advisor, your registered representative, whoever it is, such as myself, to make sure that's the appropriate path for you.
Perfect.
Once you're in that 21, you don't exchange anymore.
Yeah.
So it's not exchangeable property.
So once it's in the 721, you can't exchange out of it. You have to stay in there. And if you sell your shares, then you're going to get taxed on that.
Yeah.
Gain, right? So you have to leave it in there.
You can think of them as shares. They're called operating partnership units. But your value, your OP units in the 721 UPREIT, in the REIT, they do get taxed. Like you've ended your exchange life cycle. You're not exchanging anymore out of an UPREIT. People might want to do that though because they have expenses. So Hayden, I'm sure you've worked with plenty of wealthy investors who are like, well, I might want, to either do a HELOC or some sort of cash out refinance to get money out of their real estate. And then you could present them with this type of option. Like you can't sell your bathroom, right? To get 10 grand out of your house.
That's right.
So, what are some ways that people might be looking to get some equity out of their real estate?
Yeah, I think you're bringing up a great point, right? Like again, having this arsenal of tools at your disposal, it might not be cookie cutter for each person, but when you're looking for customized approaches to what's going to work for someone, like to your point, Erica, someone who needs liquid funds now, right? They're not going to sell their bathroom. So maybe it comes down to selling their property and moving it into one of these funds. It's going to be different for everyone. I think you've spoken a lot to the flexibility maybe that the exchange will give you over doing something like these REITs, right? But for each individual portfolio, it's going to be different. And that's why you have a team of advisors who know each particular product so well that you don't have to know it. You just have to know that the loophole exists and that you want to use it. And then you utilize the perfect person to help you do that.
Yeah. One point that I want to bring up, Erica and Hayden, is that as these investors get older, they're faced with, some health issues. As they get older, they may not be exercising right. They might not have a good nutritious diet, and they're managing these properties, a lot of stress and anxiety, and they want an escape, right? They want to escape from all of that. So I wanted to ask you and Erica, what are some of the objections that these investors have? Because they don't want to lose their purse. They don't want to lose their money. A lot of these people are very conservative and they don't want to get into an investment they don't really know about. So what are some of those objections or concerns that they have, about getting into something like this?
I'll go first. Well, the main objection is that they don't know about them, right? So like the whole purpose Hayden wrote this article to begin with was to bring that awareness to people, because like I said, these are all like legal ways to build your wealth through real estate, but they just sound way too good to be true. And people think, oh, that's some sketchy loophole. I'm going to lose my money if the IRS audits me. No, you're only going to lose your money if the IRS audits you and you did it wrong, right? Like if you weren't talking to your real estate professional, your qualified intermediary, your investment advisor, registered rep like myself, if you're not talking to your CPA or your real estate attorney, those are really important pieces. It's like you're at the center, the investor, and you should have all of these parties focused in around you to have this like full circle of support. Like Hayden said, you need a team. We're not one party like you can be a Jack or Jill of all trades for certain things, but like I'm not a CPA. I'm not going to give you official tax advice. My only tax advice is talk to your tax professional. So that's huge when you're talking to investors who are worried, they get concerns because they sound too good to be true.
I think, yes, absolutely. I'm going to tag on to what Erica's saying because she hit the nail on the head. It comes down to either fear or lack of knowledge. Those are the two things, right? That's why I wrote the article, because usually it's lack of knowledge. That's where it starts, right? And then you start educating yourself and you just feel like, whoa, this is too... How am I going to know every aspect of each one of these resources or tools or how to utilize them? And people just get information overload and they step away from it. That's not for me. That's for the wealthy. That's not for me. And you know what? At the end of the day, if you want to be the wealthy, it is for you. And you got to figure it out. And you have to arm yourself with the right team to help you figure it out.
That's so true.
Absolutely.
Some questions?
Yep. I think we have a question. What's the biggest 1031 myth you hear from San Diego investors? Investigators or investors? I guess investigate. Well, when you're an investor, you're investigating, right? So what's the biggest myth that you've heard, Hayden and Erica? I'll go last.
Well, I think Hayden put it in her article that it's a loophole, that it's not valid.
Yeah. Yep.
But no, sorry, was the question, what's the biggest myth?
What's the biggest myth?
I would say that would be that that they're not like kind property, or that they're just not fully passive. You know, people think like, oh, well, you know, I have to just keep my real estate, or I can't 1031 exchange into that. And people just don't know that they're like kind property. They think like kind is like, okay, if I'm selling a duplex that each of them are 1 bed, 1 bath, then I have to buy another duplex with 1 bed, 1 bath. And it's like, no. As long as it's, you know, fits under the guidelines of like kind is like a super extremely vague term, actually. And it used to be in a 1031 exchange, you could sell cattle for cattle, and like you had to sell a piece of farmland for a piece of farmland. Now, like kind does not mean that. It means like investment real estate, not inventory real estate. Maybe we can get into what the differences are in another show sometime, but like investment real estate held for, what do you say? Held for business, held for the productive use of a trade or business, or held for investment purposes. Yeah. So like, you know, you're collecting rent. Great. Buy another property where you're collecting rent. That's a very, very loose way to say like those are like kind properties. And I think people don't understand like a DST where you're fully passive and hands off, and the 721 UPREIT, fully passive, hands off. Those are completely considered like kind real estate. Yeah. So
I think.
Yeah, go ahead, Hayden.
I think from a real estate perspective, what you see more often than not is that people just think it's hard. They think it's too hard. They just don't want to do it. That's the pushback, right? Like they're just like, no, let's do it. You know, like no. And my goodness, you're leaving so much money on the table, right? Like that is not the way to be a smart investor. So our audience, right? We want to make sure that leaving today, that is absolutely out of your excuse bank, right? It's not too hard. It's maybe too hard for you to do yourself. And that's why you get a team of people to help you do it and save you money, right?
Yeah,
exactly. Okay, we have another question. One question every San Diego owner must ask their CPA before listing their property. What is that one question that they have to ask their CPA before listing their property? Should I list my property? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, it's important to know what your tax burden would be if you list it, right? You know, Hayden mentioned you could owe $100,000 or more on the property sale. What if for some reason you have some other carry forward losses from somewhere else, or maybe you haven't depreciated very much? There's so many ways that we aren't really aware that the property might not have as big of a capital gain implication as you think it does. Some people, like, you know, if you've received a really terminal illness, you know, and you could be passing away anytime now, you don't want to be maybe in the middle of something and then leaving your kids with more of a headache to figure out. There's so many, you know, factors, but asking your CPA, you know, what does my tax bill look like if I just sell versus exchange? Knowing what that is, you know, the federal gains, capital gains for the federal government, for the franchise tax board, for all of the 4 different things: depreciation, recapture, net investment income tax. What does that all actually boil down to? If it's $75,000, maybe you don't want to lock your money up for the foreseeable future. Maybe you'd rather cash out.
Absolutely. So Hayden, we're almost out of time, but wanted to get your last comment, your last take on the show, and obviously, you know, your article or anything that you want to say to the viewers.
Sure. I think what I'll say to the viewers is you work hard for your money, right? You work hard for your money. You took the risk of owning real estate, you deserve to keep as much of that reward as you possibly can, right? As is legally possible. And this actually gives you the tools to do just that.
Perfect. Well, thank you all so much for joining us here at LEARNin 1031 Live. Erica Traulsen, Legacy and Investments Real Estate. Hayden, thank you so much for being here today with, and your article. Thank you for sharing so much information. We also want to remind our audience to join school to learn about all the other videos that we've had in the past so that you can get up to date on what's going on in real estate. Thank you again so much for joining our show. We look forward to seeing you at the next show. And we'll see you at the next LEARNin 1031 Live.